Well, welcome back everyone to another install in this month's Leadership Bootcamp webinar series. Thrilled to tackle this topic with you all today. One of the things that I've had to do as a leader, and I'm sure most of you are being tasked with similar insights to gather, is finding stories for us to anchor on, so that way we can strategically figure out what are the right motions for us to drive the right outcomes. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, like, what's the best way to go about this? What is the right data to be looking at? How do we take that and put it into motion? And so today I've prepared a couple slides that are going to help you visualize how we at ClientSuccess, and just kind of, I have over the past 10 years, taken a look at data across the customer lifecycle to really figure out how do we mitigate risk, but more importantly, capitalize on those opportunities. So the framework that I've used for today's webinar is basically kind of mirroring our customer lifecycle, which hopefully many of you guys have seen from past boot camps where we've talked about building your customer journey. I've used some of these slides before, so hopefully some of it's familiar, but really excited to tackle this. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So I came across this quote and I loved it because I thought it really embodied what it is that I'm always trying to accomplish, and probably some of what you're all trying to accomplish as well. But the goal is to turn data into information, and information into insights. And so this was the ex-CEO of Hewlett-Packard, Carly Fiorina. And when I came across this quote, I thought, wow, yes, like that is the goal, right? We're not looking at data for the sake of looking at data. It's not like we're all sitting around with nothing else to do, so we're gonna go and pull a bunch of spreadsheets and try to just analyze things. It's always with intention, right? We're looking at data so that we can figure out where can we optimize things to drive better experiences for our customers? How can we help our customers get more value from the partnership? How do we mitigate risk, right? When our customers aren't getting what they need from us, how do we turn that around and make that an opportunity? And so this, I thought, really embodied what we're going to talk about today, which is how do we look at data? How do we make sure that we're asking the right questions? And then how do we take the insights that we glean from that and put together action plans? And so much of what you'll see today in my slides, again, mocked up data. So it's not actually ClientSuccess data. I've had to tune it a little bit. Some of it's with an overlay of concepts and things that we are looking at here, but don't misrepresent any of the information that's here. This is not directly from ClientSuccess data, but there to help educate and inform and hopefully help you think differently about how you're approaching this in your own business. So before we get in, I like to walk you guys through a framework always. I think frameworks really help to just give some direction and context to what we're trying to accomplish together. So for me, finding information, right, leveraging data is really trying to figure out what is the story, right? What is the data story here? And then how are we going to put together the right programs as leaders to go and tackle the insights that we're finding? So I want to give you a high-level overview of how you can go and approach this in your business. And as you're tackling this project and this program or this problem, where can you start and how can you manage through? So the first thing I'm going to task you all with is getting access to the data. Now, I know for so many of you, this is a challenge in its own, right? Even getting to answers of those questions and putting together programs, getting access to that data can sometimes be a challenge. But if you aren't using a platform like ClientSuccess where you have all of that in one place, it's important for you to think about where are all of the different data insights, where do they live, right? And try to get access to those. Even if you have to compile a bit of it yourself manually, it is important because without that data and insights, you're not going to have that story to formulate, right? Or else we're making guesses, we're hypothesizing things. And then if we build programs off of guesses, right, probably not always going to drive the right outcomes. So the first thing you need to figure out is where does that data live, and then getting access to it so that you can use it together. Now, this is why I tell everybody, the first thing you should be tackling as a CS leader is focusing on data democratization, right? Not only pulling all of your data into one area, but making sure that everybody who has access to that data can also use it intelligently to drive business decisions. So please, if you don't have access to data, if you don't have access to good data, please make that the priority for yourself going into the new year. Try to do your best to compile, even if it's small pieces of that data. You don't need every single aspect of it, but try to get access to something so you can start. The second thing that I found really helpful here is mapping the life cycle. Like I said earlier, many of you have attended my boot camps where we talked about how do you build your customer lifecycle, your customer journey. And I think it's important because there's different questions you're going to ask when your customers are at different stages in that journey, right? You're expecting them to behave differently as they kind of go on that journey with you. And so I think it's important to think about it through that lens, because, for example, your customers who are in onboarding are going to behave very differently than your customers who have been around for 3 years. And so understanding where your customers are in their own journey and with a partnership really helps to level set. So for me, I think this is critical. At least have a framework that helps you guide and understand so you can meet your customers where they are. The third thing I'm going to advise you to do is go and define your questions, right? When you're working with data, it's all about what are the questions that you're asking, or else again, you're just looking at data. So it's important that you kind of make a list, right? And so I'm going to give you examples of questions that I might ask about my customers in different stages to help us understand, like, are our customers behaving the right way? Are they doing the right things to drive their outcomes? And if not, how do we get them on that path? So start to think about it, right? What are the questions that you and other stakeholders in your business, what are the things you want to know? Make that list and start to map them against that life cycle. It'll be really helpful as you start to formulate those stories. The fourth thing I'm going to ask you to do is you're going to look for themes, right? Once you've got the data, you've kind of mapped it against that, you've asked these questions, you're hopefully getting data and insights back from those questions. Now it's how do we look? We've got to find themes, right? Now, if we tried to solve for every individual customer challenge, problem, opportunity, that might be a bit difficult to scale, right? You're not going to create unique programs that are going to tackle all of those things, but you might be able to say, hey, look, we've actually found that like customers doing this in onboarding actually prevent them from actually getting the value that they need, or it's a longer time to value, or maybe it's even failure to launch, right? So it's those themes that we're looking for that are those behavioral things that we can go and then work to address. So that's the framework I'm going to ask you to start with as you're thinking through your data project in this program, is get access to data. Doesn't have to be everything, but start somewhere. Make sure that it is current and accurate. Map it against your life cycle. Ask great questions. So define what those questions are that you want answered by that data, and then look for common themes so that way you can strategically tackle this at scale. Now, again, for those of you who may have attended boot camps in the past and are familiar, we're actually in the process of optimizing this. So exciting stuff to come out of ClientSuccess in 2023. But this is the journey that I've shared with many of you and the community over the past probably about 2 years now, since 2021. And so this is what this looked like for us. So we've got 4 stages in our journey. Remember, there is no right or wrong way to map your journey. You can have 7 stages, you can have 2 stages. It doesn't matter. This is what worked for us and our team at the time. And so we've broken it down into 4 different stages. Our first stage is all about alignment. It's about setting proper expectations, making sure that our customers, they know what they can expect from us. We know what we can expect from them. We're all aligned and we're on this journey together. So it really allows us to for us, it's all about execution. Equivalent for some of you might use just the term onboarding, which is totally fine. For us, it's all about execution. So it's making sure that our customers are effectively onboarded into the platform, that they have configured it in a way that's meaningful for them and aligns to their use cases, that we've trained them and their teams so they can use it effectively moving forward. And hopefully we're trying to figure out, what does that initial win look like? Stage 3 here at ClientSuccess is all about realizing value. And so for us, this is going to be demonstrated by our customers' ability to adopt our platform effectively. Now, if any of you are out there using a customer success management software, or if you're using ClientSuccess, our hope is that your teams are using this every day, right? As often as they're engaging with customers, as often as they are working on their customers, it's important that is being housed in one system to, again, create that central pane of glass, right? That one united framework where all customer information lives. So for us, it's all about that realization. We want to make sure that we're clear on our customers' goals, more importantly, that we're tracking and marching towards those. Stage 4 for us is all about advocacy. Now, this manifests itself in many ways. We see our customers demonstrate their advocacy through staying with the partnership, so renewals or retention. Perhaps this is demonstrated through advocacy programs. Maybe it's demonstrated by growth, right? So for us, our goal, which we believe is mutually beneficial, that if we have helped our customers We set proper expectations. We helped them configure the platform in a meaningful way and then trained them on how to use it. We helped guide them as they were realizing value and driving that through adoption. We get to this state of advocacy where we are all united in success. Our customers were hopefully staying with us and happy to share their experiences with the community. So this is the journey lens in which I'm going to look through our data story. So as we go through the next couple of slides, you're going to see me use this framework to say, here's where we are in our journey. Here's the types of questions that I would ask. Here is some insights that we might glean from this data. And then here's action plans that we'd put together. Now, like I said, the data is kind of embellished. It's made up. I've kind of put some numbers in there just for the effect of today's storytelling. But some of the action plans are actually things that we are working towards. So all interesting, but here to educate, enable you all to build something similar in your own organizations. So the first thing I want to start with, and you're going to see this is the same framework I'm going to use for all stages. So there's basically 3 slides here per stage to walk you through this. So the first thing I'm going to start with is our align stage. Now, I mentioned our align stage is really focused on expectation setting. It's all around goal definement. It's making sure that we're moving forward effectively with our customers and quickly. I will say our align stage really kind of lasts like 5 business days. It's all about moving quickly to get our customers established in the partnership so we can move to that stage of execution. So some questions I might ask, and again, these are examples to help spur some ideas for all of you as you're thinking about your own customer journey. So things I might ask in this align stage is, does our customer align with our ideal customer profile? Now, for many organizations, that matters, right? If you have a poor fit customer, everything that happens in that customer's journey is going to need to be slightly modified, right? Maybe the resources you staff against it, their ability to achieve value, time to value, all of those things might deviate from that ideal customer, in which case it's important to understand what those customers look like if they're not aligned. Now, you'll never hear me say, don't sell to customers that aren't your ideal customer profile, because again, who would listen? But what we do want to make sure is that we have early insights to customers who might not be 100% of a fit. So that way we can set proper expectations and we can design a program that's going to meet them where they are. So that might be the first question I want to understand is like, does the customer align with our ideal customer profile? So this would help me analyze all the customers that we have early in the stage and say, of our customers who are coming into the partnership during this align stage, what percentage of them, right, represent our ICP? So those are things we might want to dig into. The second thing, are we kicking off within the first 5 business days, the partnership? Now for us, we need to move swiftly because we don't want to delay our ability to get our customers up and running. And we do introduce a formal conversation, which again, we did a boot camp on, which is our partnership kickoff. So in that framework, right, we want to make sure that we're establishing the relationship early, quickly. So we might be looking at this and say, hey, for customers where we're able to get that kickoff in the first 5 days, it makes a material difference to how we start the partnership, right? Or even getting into onboarding. So this might be something that I'm looking at because it's a benchmark that I've set for this stage in our journey. Now, you all might have different barometers around these types of things, right? For you, it might be 10 days. Maybe you don't care about the days. It doesn't matter. It happens when it happens. For us, this is something that I would want to look into. The third question I might ask is, do we have business goals and objectives for the partnership? Do we have these defined? Now, for us, we don't believe that we can effectively move forward towards value realization if we don't understand what that looks like for our customers. So at ClientSuccess, obviously, listen, we're not perfect. We're like everybody. We're doing our best to make sure that we have an understanding of what our customers expect from the partnership and what that success criteria looks like. So for us, we want to make sure once we've gotten to this conversation, right, have our customers been able to effectively articulate what their goals are? And do we have KPIs that align to that so we can measure it effectively over the course of their life cycle? The fourth thing I might ask, do we have an understanding of key stakeholders in the partnership, right? Again, our align stage of our partnership, very short, very specific. So when you think about the questions here, they're very pointed because I want to make sure that for all the customers who are in this stage, that we're doing it right. And having an understanding of who those key stakeholders are is critical to our success, right? We do ask that everyone participate, all stakeholders participate in that first initial partnership kickoff meeting, because it's really helpful for us to establish relationships, align, set those expectations. I'm sure many of you have had the experience, right? If you ask 3 different people in your partnerships with your customers the same question, you're gonna get 3 different answers. This helps to mitigate some of that, helps bring us all on the same page, and hopefully we have that alignment. So again, when I think about thinking about the right questions to ask, for me, these are 4 examples of the types of questions I might want to understand about my customers who are in that aligned stage. Now, if I ask those 4 questions, hopefully I'm going to start to find some data. Now, this is where I said the data is not accurate, so please don't interpret it as such. But the first question I asked, right, like, does our customers, are they the right ICP, right? So I might start to uncover types of insights that help me understand that. So I might start to see things like this. 15% of our customers do not align with the ideal customer profile, right, that ICP. That could be alarming, right? If you think about 15% of customers, and I didn't even put here 15% of ARR, that could also be another metric you want to look at, not just the unique customers or logos, but rather the revenue represented by that as well. Now, why that's important? Well, if we know that the ideal customer profile, if they're not aligned, that we have to deviate, we're going to have to add more resources, time to value is going to be longer, it's going to be a bit of a challenge to make sure that we get to that value realization, right? There's a lot of complexities there. So if I see that 15% of the customers who are in that stage who have just come into the partnership, that's going to be a challenge. Now, non-ICP customers, right? They might say, we might find a stat here also that says non-ICP customers on average are taking 10% longer to onboard. That could be a really significant amount of time. Now, if you have an enterprise solution where it is a lot of customization, we're not talking just configuration, customization, think Salesforce, right? If you're talking 10% longer timelines to value to onboard, that's significant. Now, when you're trying to plan resource allocation and do all of the things that really help you even just manage your business, something like that can really impact things. So for me, those are important insights for me to understand, right? I'm seeing that there's 15% of our customers, they're not aligned to the ICP, and those customers on average are taking 10% longer to onboard. So those insights are really helpful for me as a business leader so that I can go and take some action because I know that these are things worth impacting. When I think about starting on time, right? I talked about what that next question was, which is, are my customers starting that partnership kickoff within the first 5 business days? We might start to find insights like this, right? Our large customers who are over X amount of dollars, I used an example of 50,000 ARR, they start 5 to 7 days into the partnership rather than us getting that conversation booked, usually 1 to 3 days. And so that's an important stat for us because what we're seeing is that large, complex organizations, maybe enterprise businesses, they're taking a little bit longer to get their ducks in a row for us to have that conversation. So I'm going to have to think about what for us, how do we accelerate that? Now, I'm also seeing that starting late, it results in double the time added to onboarding, right? So it's punting us out. So another thing that's impacting our onboarding timelines. So if we don't get that partnership kicked off, started effectively, like right at the right time, it could have lagging impact on onboarding and our ability to realize value. The third thing here is your goals defined, right? I asked how many of our customers or ensuring, what percent of our customers don't have those goals defined or making sure that all of them do. So we might find some insights that tell us this story, right? Customers who don't have goals defined during kickoff have a 15% higher chance of churn in year 1, right? This is the power of insights and data, right? If you have all this information collected somewhere, you'll be able to kind of draw on it to tell these stories. So if I'm seeing that my customers who don't have goals defined early, it means that we're not helping them realize value. So at the end of the partnership, they're having a difficult time justifying that ROI. They're not seeing the value from the partnership, and it could be impacting your retention and churn rates. So that could be a really interesting insight that we glean from the data in that aligned stage, all correlating back to our customers' ability to define their goals. We might also see that customers who don't have these KPIs that they can measure for their KPIs have a lower adoption rate, right? So your customers are struggling to adopt the platform effectively because they're not really mapping it back to anything that's going to drive significant value in their business. So again, as you think about the types of questions you ask, these are some of the types of insights you might be able to glean from that. Now, if you have a data science team or you have a data team, I was fortunate enough to have that type of team in 2 organizations, they work magic. And so, but I will tell you, having them only worked when I provided them with a ton of great questions. That's where you get the answers. So again, if you don't have the right questions, if you're not asking the right questions, you're not going to be able to find the right insights. So this is where it becomes really insightful to us, is what comes out of that. Now, key stakeholders, right? I asked, do we basically have an understanding of who the key stakeholders are in the partnership? Well, I might start to see things like this, right? Customers who, with actively engaged executive sponsors, have a 40% higher adoption rate. Now, again, these numbers are not true, but I will tell you, at ClientSuccess, right? When we have our VPs of CS or chief customer officers or whomever is kind of like the leader of that CX function, when they're engaged in the partnership, I will tell you, configuration is much stronger in the platform. The strategy is really tight. How the team uses the platform is very thoughtful and aligned with driving value for their customers. So while that number is not representative of our truth, I will tell you that that does have direct correlation to what we see across the board, right? So for us, we want to make sure that we have actively engaged executives because it's important, right? Our success is almost dependent on it. We might also see that customers with a CRM admin who map their data feel 90% more confident in data accuracy, right? So this is another example of a key stakeholder. For us, being able to have somebody who owns their data from their CRM, which inevitably finds its way into ClientSuccess, that's a key role, right? Because you have somebody who's in charge of the governance of all that data that lives in their CRM, making sure that it's accurate, it's current, but then also can help us manage the data flow into our solution. Now, where we don't have that role, it's a little bit of a challenge, right? We basically don't know if all the data in their CRM is accurate, if it's current, right? We don't have a governance program around it. Also getting that data flowing in, right? We might not have the right technical aptitude in the conversations to help us get that configured. So this is where these type of insights are super valuable to the partnership and important for me as a leader to understand about our customers. So these are 4 different kind of narratives that could come out of the 4 questions that I've asked in that initial stage of our align. So if you have these insights, this is where this becomes really valuable for you as a leader, right? Understanding the stories that come out of this is what's going to help inform your activities. So I'm going to give you some examples of how I might take this now and apply it to strategic initiatives in the business. Now, here's an example of me saying, okay, we looked at these 4 types of questions. We got these 4 kind of level of insights with a few different exciting data points that can help us really drive strategy and tactics that are going to help us move things forward, right? So for ICP management, right, we saw that like the ability to have customers that matched our ideal customer profile, they got more value, they were more successful, faster onboarding. So what would I do as a leader here to help manage that? So we might partner with sales, right? Like get sales bought in here and ask them to help us, right? Focus on the deals that are in line with that core ICP. So maybe they've committed to saying, you know what, we're going to focus and say of the deals in pipeline, we're going to really focus on that ideal customer profile. We'll make a commitment to increase the deals closed by 5%. Now, again, these are all made up strategies, but again, could be something that's really impactful to driving that right outcome, which is going to have material impact on the business. Now, something else, right? Internal tracking and communication around customers who are non-ICP, right? The worst thing you can have as a CSM, right? And I know that we've all been there, is deal close, and then you get that customer and all of their expectations are misaligned. They're not really the right fit. You don't know how you're going to onboard them, what they want, the product doesn't actually have. And so not that it would change things tremendously, but if there was a way to signal all of that information prior to close and prior to handoff, we can embrace that customer, right? And meet them where they are with a different strategy, a different plan, and hopefully open-minded and open-hearted. So getting that information, right? We might want to put something in place here that will help us identify that sooner. You might want to create a modified onboarding experience for those, right? Those non-ICP customers. Like I said, for most companies, I think it's a one size fits most from what I've seen on onboarding experiences, not a ton of customization. And that's okay if that works for your customer, for your business. But if you've got a customer who is not ICP, right, and you know that they're going to struggle, perhaps design a modified onboarding experience for those individuals. So something else that I might want to put into action would be something like that. Last thing I want to say, you know what, we've also got to have early exec intervention, right? If we know that these customers are inevitably going to go off the rails, we want to prevent that as much as possible. Sometimes you can have exec intervention early in the partnership to just make sure that expectations are aligned. And we've got somebody who's helping manage that at the executive level, both internally at your company, but then also on the customer's end as well. So again, these are examples of how I've taken the insights now and I'm trying to put them into plans here that we can take action on. And that's really how you're going to move the needle for your business. Now, let's look at the second one, early time management, right? We've said these were customers who we didn't get kicked off in a timely manner. So perhaps one thing we can do here is instead of waiting for them to be a customer and get handed off to the CSM and the CSM's got to work with their schedule and try to get this locked down, perhaps we say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Sales Rep, once you've got like a verbal commit and we're just waiting for T's and C's and the signature and we know that that's imminently going to happen, how about you take the initiative to have another engagement with that prospect and work to get that call scheduled? Now, by putting something on the books, it's kind of like that forcing function anyway for them to hopefully get that signature when they committed to, but then also helps to make sure that we're mitigating any back and forth that might delay that process. So creating something like that would be a great process to help us mitigate that risk. You can also ask your CSMs, hey, CSMs, we know scheduling becomes difficult. Why don't you block off or reserve some time on your schedule for kickoff calls, right? And just reserve that, keep it private, keep it guarded. That way, when we have a customer come into the partnership, that way they immediately have a time that you can reference that's always available. You don't got to move anything and you can communicate with the prospect and hopefully that works for them and you can get that locked down. Also, pre-kickoff prep to support onboarding, right? Perhaps you've got a checklist or you've got other assets to share. Anything you can do to accelerate what's going to happen over the next couple of days would be beneficial. So perhaps you have a pre-kickoff package maybe that you send to your customers or those prospects about to be customers. And you say, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, we're so excited to get started as we finalize signature and all that stuff. Here's the assets, here's the information that you're going to need to get started with us. So that way we can hit the ground running day one, right? So how do we accelerate some of that communication and expectation management with our customers? The next one was goal identification, right? So these were examples of customers where we knew the value of having those goals defined. So we might say goals, one way to do this, we can send a survey to our customers in advance of kickoff. So that way we can establish what those goals are early, right, before that kickoff. We can confirm the goals at the partnership kickoff. Instead of starting at that conversation to define them and align on them, we can say, hey, you've already communicated to us what your goals are. Now we just want to make sure that these are accurate. This is what we're working towards. So we're just reconfirming for them. Listen, if they weren't able to do it in advance, you could still use that time to flesh these out, but it's important that we get those locked down. Finding moments in the partnership and throughout that life cycle to reconfirm those goals, also really important, right? So you can reconfirm goals at onboarding kickoff, reconfirm at the wrap up. Sometimes just confirming early and often is helpful because it makes sure that we're all on the same page and we're working towards the same things. Lastly, making sure that they're all tracked somewhere. At ClientSuccess, we're blessed to have the ability to track all of our customers' goals. We can actually even integrate those into customer health scores, which is really valuable. So for us, making sure that we not only have an understanding of what those goals are, but that we can track, manage, and measure them. That's really important for us as well. So those are things that we can put in place, actions that we can take to mitigate the risks that we saw with lack of goals defined. And the last one, relationship management. Same thing, right? We can go and ask sales to assist with mapping the relationship in the CRM prior to close. That way we know who the key stakeholders were, at least in that stage in the partnership. We do require, right, all stakeholders be required to attend that partnership kickoff. It's a great way to start to build those relationships, set expectations, make sure everyone's aligned. And then also you can introduce things like executive outreach programs, or make sure that you're asking your CSMs to manage their contacts every 30 days, verify contacts are accurate, correct, right? There's a lot of movement right now, especially we know that there's a lot of layoffs, there's a lot of changes, people are moving jobs. Being able to manage that change is important. So like I said, I'm not going to read through every bullet on every slide, but I kind of want to introduce you guys to the idea here that with the questions that you're going to formulate, you're going to find a lot of really insightful data, stories, right? Those themes. The only way that is going to change the trajectory of your business is by putting together these plans. So these are just examples of things that someone might do to help address the challenges that we've just identified. So let's advance to the next stage here. So our next stage here, like I said, execute very much emulates onboarding for most organizations. We just call it execute. So different questions I might ask here, right? Has the customer successfully integrated their CRM into ClientSuccess in the first 10 business days? Is the data accurate, current, and verified? For us, that's really key to our success, right? We rely on the data that's coming from their CRM to help manage all those customers in our platform. And so getting that integration done and completed, critical to our success. Now, as you think through your own products, right, and the things that need to happen for your customers to get real value, I'm sure you can think of those critical steps in your own process that are required. It would be great as a question just to ask, are these things happening when they're supposed to happen? If we know that that's going to accelerate your ability to be successful, focus on those key points. The next thing I might want to ask, are core parts of the platform configured meaningfully by the end of onboarding? Now, again, for all of you, I'm sure there are key parts of your solution that you know if your customers are using day one are going to be those things that are super sticky, right? Those are going to be the things that will keep your customers coming back into your solution, but only if they are properly configured and properly enabled. So for us, we might say, looking at our data, right? Do we see that these things have been configured in a meaningful way that will help them achieve their outcomes? The third thing I might want to ask, right? Has this customer been trained on the administrative backend to leverage this independently? And I say independently, right? Because we're not always there, right? We shouldn't be. That's not what SaaS is. We want our customers to be able to effectively use our solutions without our help. If we've trained them and enabled them effectively, that should be possible. And so for us, the third question I might ask is like, have we done that? Right? Have we had that training? Did we go through this process with the admins who are going to be administering the solution in their organizations? Now, in some cases, if your product is not as complex, your admins, your end users, they might all be one and the same, and that's okay. For us, again, it's critical to understand, do our admins know how to properly use our product, configure it, use it? And then the last thing I might want to ask is, have we completed end user training enablement? Because it's all well and good if our admins are trained and they know the back end, right? The nooks and crannies, how do you make this work? But your end users need to be able to effectively use it in their day-to-day. And their use cases, their workflows, and what they do in your solution might look different. Now, if your end user and your admin are the same, again, totally fine. Think about the questions that are going to be critical to your success. So for us, I want to make sure that the data in our solution is accurate and current, right? That we've got that all flowing in and that's been completed quickly. We want to make sure that the product's configured in a meaningful way, right? So for us, we have a product called Success Cycles, which is effectively our playbooks, right? Are our customers leveraging that in a way that's helping them, again, manage their customer lifecycle in our product, right? Giving their team the frameworks of what to do and when to do it. We might look at something like that, right? Have they configured it? Are they using it dynamically? And training, right? For us, that's key. We know that we can't have success long-term if our customers don't really know how to use our product and how to get value out of it. If they're not understanding the core use cases and what's possible, right? Those possibilities that the sales team probably sold to them, we've got to make sure that we can help that become a reality. So those are 4 questions I might ask during the execute stage. And then I might find some stories here. So again, I won't read all of these because I'm watching the clock here, but for us, like data integration, right? Being able to see how that's going to impact adoption rates. Being able to understand, like we know for our customers, they need to be able to trust and rely on our platform, and they can't do that if they don't trust the data, right? So we know that that's a key component, right? That the data accurately flows into our solution, it's current, it's all right. If it is, we know that that's going to have impact on the partnership, because if they trust it, if they rely it, they'll use it. Configuration, right? If our customers are only using parts of the platform, maybe they're not getting full value out of it. So we're going to see different adoption rates based on how it was configured, right? If you have core parts of your platform that weren't properly enabled and configured for your customers, they might not be able to get the value that they came into the partnership seeking. And so that's going to be a big gap. We might see that adoption rates are impacted there. We also know that can impact growth opportunities, right? Your customers aren't going to be prepared to buy more or consume more if they're not consuming what they bought day one. So that's going to impact your growth opportunities. So for us, these are important things to analyze. Admin training, right? We know that our customers who have had proper back-end training, that they're going to have fewer support tickets, right? There's a direct correlation there. If you've got a support queue that is littered with questions about how to use the product, you probably need to lean into training enablement a bit better, right? Your support team shouldn't be triaging the how-tos. Maybe they're triaging like the why isn't it? So more of the technical support things. And then, trained admins, they have a higher propensity to leverage advanced use case in the platform, right? Making it more sticky and hopefully driving more value long-term, which will result in retention and growth for you. And then end user training. At the end of the day, our platform, while administered by maybe the core team or your leadership team, if the CSMs aren't using ClientSuccess, that's going to impact our ability to be successful long-term. They've got to be able to understand the value that they can get from it, understand the benefits, and be able to integrate it into their day-to-day workflows, right? So we might see impacts there where customers who, are trained, they're going to get more value, higher adoption rates. And those who aren't, right? Like maybe the lower adoption is going to impact retention. So it's important to understand the stories that are going to come as a result of that. Now, I mentioned I am not going to read all of the plans here. We will be here all day, but I will be sharing the deck, right? And this is to give you an idea of things that you can do when you have these stories and insights, right? So for us, like data integration, right? What can I do differently? Well, our technical teams, right? The sales calls that we have to verify the configuration nuances, what can we do to make sure that we are getting ahead of all the gotchas, right? Maybe there's a different line of questioning that we ask, or maybe we're having different conversations with different people to make sure that we're getting ahead of that. Making sure that we're documenting any challenges and complications so that way we can flag internally and mitigate that, or bring the right resources to those conversations. So these are all plans, right? That just, again, give you ideas of things you can do once you know what the impact is, right? Once you know those stories, as a leader, this is what you're designing for, is figuring out what are the actions that we can take to mitigate this risk, more importantly, take advantage of any opportunities. So again, this is to help spur some ideation as you think about the types of questions you're going to ask, coming back and saying, okay, great, these are things that we can do. These are actions we can take. And honestly, most of these are well within my control, right? I don't have an army of people to go and do all this work for me. Probably many of your teams are even larger. You've got more resources than I do. These are also things that I can do, right? Things I can impact. And as a leader, that is your responsibility, right? Figuring out how do you impact the business in a meaningful way and hopefully at scale. So thinking about the problems, thinking about what you can do to help mitigate that. So we're going to take a stage to the next stage, our realize. So like I said, for us, this is all about product adoption, user, making sure our customers are getting value from it. So again, questions I might ask here in this stage. Has adoption increased since onboarding and end user training, right? I'm sure for most of you, early in the partnership, adoption looks low, right? They haven't been properly trained on it. The product's not been built out the way they wanted to. But once you get past that stage, hopefully onboarding, once you get past onboarding, right, adoption, engagement, that should increase. And if you're not seeing that pick up, right, there could be something that happened. So that could be an early warning sign for you that maybe there was a bit of a failure to launch or something stalled in the program and you've got to dial back in to see what happened. So that's an important thing to measure, right? Am I seeing an increase there? Are customers increasing licenses or adding new modules in the first 12 months of the partnership? Right? If they're getting value, if they're consuming everything they've purchased, if you have got a consumption model, I'm sure you're paying close attention to how your customers are consuming what they bought. If they are using everything that they purchased, they will be ready to purchase more, not before, right? If they still haven't used everything that they have day one, they're not going to be able to grow with you. So that is something to pay attention to, right? If you've got licenses, if it's consumption model, even if it's just they bought a module that they're not using effectively today, all things to consider, but paying attention to that. Do we have regular engagement with our customers that's aligned with their designated engagement model? Now, not all customers are treated equal. I get that. That's why we have segmentation. There are different designs for every customer. But based on your designated engagement model for these customers, are you meeting those engagement benchmarks, right? So if you have a cohort of customers and your goal is to meet with those customers weekly, are you meeting with them weekly? Do you have that weekly cadence established? Are you having those conversations on a weekly basis? It's important to understand that because we understand how engagement can impact the partnership. And then are we on track and progressing towards customer goals? For us in this stage, right, if we're not helping our customers get closer to that value realization, we're not doing our jobs. right? At the end of the day, they have to be able to achieve the goals that they set on the onset of the partnership. So being able to track that, manage and monitor. So once I've asked those questions, right, I'm going to find a bunch of different insights and stories. I might find things like, your customers who are daily active users of the platform have an 80% increase in goal achievement, right? So that direct correlation between adoption and value, you might find that in your data story, and that's key, right? That'll help you focus and say, well, great. If we know that to be true, I've got to focus on driving more adoption, helping educate and enable my customers, and making sure that there's alignment between how they're using the platform today and what they're trying to achieve long term. You might look at, 70% of customers who are regular users of the platform opt into one of your advocacy programs, right? We're all focused on building up our customer advocates, right? They're our biggest pipeline. So it's really important for us that we understand, how do we take a look at that and drive more advocacy? Right. And so all of these are going to have those storylines for you, whether you're looking at growth opportunities, how your customers are engaging and the lack thereof. Right. You might find that customers who are not actively engaged in the partnership have a lower likelihood to renew. Right. This is where the data is critical, because this is going to inform your strategies. And then value realization. This is a huge one for us. Right. Maybe we're going to find things like 95% of customers who have defined and achieved their goals. Right, that we've got that, and that 30% commit to a multi-year renewal, right? You might see that there's a direct correlation between customers realizing their values and staying with you longer, right? So these are the types of insights that you hope to glean from this, but you have to be thoughtful in the questions that you're asking. So again, not going to walk you through these, but I've given you examples here. Like I said, when I share the deck, this is serving as your this week's template, because I'm giving you examples that you can go and use and kind of redesign them for your own use cases and your own insights. But if you had challenges with adoption, what are some things you could do? If you had challenges with growth, right? How do you flip that on its head? Engagement or value realization. These are all different types of tactics or strategies I might deploy to help mitigate that risk and turn these things around. So think about this as, again, I'm all about ideation this week. So this is hopefully here to establish some ideas around what you can do once you understand what's happening in your book. And then the last stage here of advocacy. So I might want to lean in here, right? This is important for us. Our advocacy stage isn't just about developing advocates. It also is going to be realized by retention and growth and all those revenue motions as well. So I might want to see like what % of our customers have opted into one of our advocacy programs and which one generates the most interest. I'll tell you across the board, I know for certain that our customers are most interested in beta programs and leaning in and being part of the collaboration that is our product roadmap. So this is important to understand, right? How many of your logos, right, have an advocate represented, and then how many unique advocates do you have within each of those customer sets? And then what are the programs that they're leaning into? How do you capitalize on those? I might want to ask what % of my customers are providing feedback in the past, period of time. In this case, maybe it's 6 months, right? We want to focus on hearing our customers and driving the right kind of engagements and experiences for them based on their feedback. This is important, understanding how many of them are providing that feedback. Looking at why customers stay and why they go. This is something I brought up a couple weeks ago in one of our other boot camps, but digging into that, right? What are the 3 most common churn reasons and 3 highest retention reasons? Those are things that are going to help inform what you do more of and what you need to address and change. And then what % of your customers renewed with a multi-year subscription? I love this because I know, especially now, there's so much uncertainty and so much volatility in the market. We're all struggling with our own customers. Being able to secure longer term commitments is just going to be helpful to the partnerships, can be helpful to the business. And so making that a big focus area could be something you want to lean into. So things I might learn, right? 30% of my customers, they've opted into an advocacy program. Beta programs have the highest number of participants. Something else I might find, right? Only 20% of customers who expressed an interest in speaking engagements spoke. Right? So we're not capitalizing on those customers who want us to be a platform for them to evangelize their personal brands and give them an opportunity to share their own stories, right? How do we hone in on that? Because that's a huge mutual benefit to you and your customers. Which of your customers are giving you feedback, right? Another little anecdote I put together, 85% of those who participated in a VOC program are active users of the platform and engaged in the partnership, right? So probably the people that aren't giving you any feedback, maybe they're just not engaged, right? And that's why paying attention to the ones who don't respond to surveys or aren't giving feedback are probably the ones you need to double click into. They're probably the most there. Reason mapping. I love this. Something ClientSuccess does extremely well, especially in our Pulse product. But what are the 3 reasons your customers stay? What are the 3 reasons they leave? Emulate success. Go address the challenges. So if you know why they're staying, do more of that. If you know why they're leaving, go and fix that. Multi-years, right? Like, what can you do to go amplify that? If you said 30% of customers who renewed this year renewed on a multi-year, okay, why? What happened there? What did we do successfully? Again, how do we go and emulate that? Or customers who committed to a multi-year had high adoption, engagement, and strong leadership strategies. How do we go and define those earliers, right? Like customers who are showing strong adoption, engagement, and strategy. How do I go and tackle those and say, these are prime for a multi-year? If we want to drive more of that, go hone in on that data. So point being here, your data is going to tell you a lot. You've got to ask the right questions. Again, I'll give you a sneak peek. These are a bunch of different things you could do. If these were the questions and answers I got, how do I leverage this now so I can go do more and drive more for the business? Again, the intention here, my action slides are going to help you ideate and think creatively about different programs or ways that you can tackle similar challenges in your own business. So I do always like to present some mistakes to avoid. So this week's data mistakes to avoid. 1, don't fudge the data. I've actually had conversations with folks where they manipulate the data to tell a story that they want to tell. I will tell you that doesn't benefit anybody. So please live in your truth. If all the data says that everything is horrible, it's okay. Now go do something about it. But whatever you do, don't try to manipulate it to falsify a story, right? Live in your truth. Don't get frustrated. Use what you have. The biggest complaint I get from leaders is that they don't have access to data, right? They can't get it. They don't know where it is. They don't know if it's accurate. It's not coming into the right systems. They can't get the data to talk to each other. Don't get frustrated. I know it's really tough. Try to work with what you have. It's okay. Little baby steps, which kind of leads me into point 3. Don't bite off more than you can chew. I put together a ton of action plans there. I am telling you, I am not doing all of those things, nor should you, right? Figure out and prioritize the things that are going to make the biggest impact on your business. It is critical that you prioritize. Do not go and try to do more than you can. I promise you, you'll end up failing and nothing will be successful. So please, 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 bite-sized little bits, go tackle what's going to have the most impact, baby steps. Number 4, don't do it alone. Right? I came up with a whole big plan there, but on some of the slides, you notice I said, reference collaboration with sales or marketing or product. Guess what? These are all your friends. Lean into them. These are not your problems to solve in a vacuum. This requires cross-functional collaboration. So please allow your partners across the different teams to lean in and help. That is the only way you're going to drive impact. You can't do it bottoms up. You can't do it in a silo. So please collaborate with folks, find out where they can participate and drive impact with you. And number 5, don't wait. There's never a good time. I get this all the time. Like, well, when's a good time for me to start taking on a project like this? Today. Go look at your data. Don't wait. I will tell you, like, start looking at now, come up with your hypothesis, figure out what those storylines are, and then go tackle these. Come up with new plans for 2023. It's a great time to go and do that. So please start now. So I know that I did go over, we rushed through this a little bit. Sorry, there's a lot here, but like I said, the intention of these slides is to serve as your template for this week. Want to give you some examples of questions you should be asking, how to map it against your customer lifecycle, how to find different themes, right? Give you examples of what are the outputs of the right data against the right questions, and then help you formulate some action plans, because more importantly than the data itself is what you do with it. So I'm going to stop sharing there.